Hiker Jay here. This week I'm going to be sharing with you a kitchen build that I've done in the back of my Jeep. It's a subfloor with a kitchen and a full-on dining room table and such. Stick with me and we'll go through how it was built, why I built it the way that I built it, and then how it functioned on a 3,000 mile trip. So the main part of this build was this full-on cabinet that could go in and out of the Jeep and hold the cooler, the water, the stove, and everything I needed to do to have a full-on kitchen. So what I needed was, I realized I wanted three components. I wanted a shelf, which we'll call this section, that holds the stove, and then I needed a drawer that will pull out from the actual cabinet box that holds the whole thing. So that's kind of how I refer to everything. And when I started building, first I got the stove, and it's a Eureka. It's a smaller stove. There's a lot of like similar type ones out in size now. I'll put the link down in my description down below to it. But I built the shelf to fit the actual stove. And at that point, I knew that I would need about 20 inches to have the stove fit, plus the actual canister. I went a little bit larger and I went with 24-inch rails that are up to 100 pounds. And I did 100 pounds because, as you can see, I have two layers out and I didn't want it to be super wobbly, so I went with 100 pounders and they have worked just great. So they're 100-pound rails that are 24 inches long that are on the shelf as well as the drawer. So once I had it all mocked up out of cardboard and knew that it would fit really well, I started to go to the build. First thing I built was the shelf. I cut that up, made it to fit perfectly for that, put the rails on it, and then I started to build the actual drawer. And the drawer, I kept flip-flopping. I thought I might want the drawer and this whole system over on this side of the Jeep, but then it takes away this extra shelf that I built on to the door, and I also thought maybe if I cook on this side, but I decided to do all my cooking and prepping from the outside, and that has worked out really well. I'll talk a little bit more about that in practicality when we're using it on the road, because it gives access to other people to be able to go on inside the Jeep and get things while you're cooking and doing all your business on the other side. So next I had to finish the drawer, and what I did was I built the drawer with one side being cut off and one side still being there. I still want to add a spice rack to the actual back of it, and there'll be room for that, which will be pretty nice. And it just kind of blocks off from the from this side from somebody knocking something over when you're cooking. Then the last piece I needed to do was build a cabinet for it. Here you can see that I'm actually kind of dry fitting it. Built it up, and I didn't quite build the cabinet around it, but I've got all the components. I put it in the Jeep just to make sure everything works and fits really nicely, and it did, and that was awesome. So at that point I was pretty excited because the thing that I actually had in my head was finally made out of wood and actually here in my Jeep. So once I had the whole cabinet built, you can see on the right side I was going to do a real flush across, but the kitchen cabinet had to be so much higher that I ended up putting it a little lower, because in there I've got chairs for several people, a table, the fuel, my jack, and all the different things that are underneath that subfloor. And that has worked out great, because so many times you bring chairs, you put them on the bottom of your bags, you never get them out and you never use them. So with this, that worked out really nice. And that right side is can be completely taken out, and I can put the seat down and I can actually do my own solo sleeping and camping and driving around and overlanding. So that was pretty cool. So now once I had the full cabinet built, it works great. I had to put these handles on the side where I can pull it out to the first part, and then I pull the shelf out, and then I just move the stove over and I'm ready to cook with the stove. Well, I then realized that with these runners here, I could put something across here and actually have a nice cutting board to prep food. So that's what I did with this here, and that has worked out really well to be able to prep food and cut things and do things there. But beyond that, I realized that I had another space. And originally I was just going to save that space for fuel tanks, but then once I realized how large it was, I decided to build a custom little cabinet for it. And this one as well just slides on rails. You can slide on top here, you can swap out and change just like that. But in this one, I have my full cook kit. Now a lot of this stuff I'm not going to go over. I'll do a whole loadout of this actual kitchen at some time for you so you can see all that. I just wanted to talk about the functionality of this actual cabinet. So we've got our full cook kit, paper plates, lighter, and then up top here I've got a space for all of our silverware, napkins, and they're kept clean by just having this little cutting board that's on top of it. So that was pretty cool to be able to build this little modular piece, and I might make other ones to function in other ways as well too, but I really like having this little piece that can shuffle back and forth. I've even taken it and I put this in the back there, only pull it out like so much and make a little bit of food, sandwiches, and such. So why I picked to cook from this side is that I can let somebody get into the Jeep and get things from the back, and that happens. I've got a bag here for dry storage for the canned soups, those types of things, and then I've got this cooler. This is an igloo cooler that is actually for boats, for marinas, and they come with these tie downs and everything. So I just screwed these anchors down. It came with the bungees, and this doesn't go anywhere. It has worked really well. I do want to upgrade this to a better cooler. This cooler isn't the best cooler, so I will at some point get a different system. And then for water, at this point right now, I'm testing some other products that I think will work a little better, but I've just got this Rotopaxi. If you've seen those, they bolt on or just actually have a little nut and they can just attach right to the back of your vehicle, inside your vehicle, but I've just bungeed it next to the old cooler and we just lean it down, open it up, get water, and then shut it. Rotopaxi really doesn't come with an on-off valve. I got this after I actually got the water case, but this thing is so hardcore, 2 gallons, love it. I'll put links to these two in the description down below. So once I actually had the kitchen all set and good to go the way I liked it, I wanted to do another subfloor across, and I thought I'd go the same height, but this ended up being a lot higher than I thought it would be, so I made an actual lower ledge, and this just comes out so that I can still have that half if I want to. So under here, I've got what I wanted to do was chairs, and I found some small Coleman chairs. I want to get some kind of like smaller, compact ones, but these were perfect for the distance of the back of the Jeep. And 2 of them fit in here, and then I've also got a little stool and a table, a Coleman table, which was awesome. I'll set that all up and show you how that looks. But what I ran into was this panel right here lifts up and your jack is down in here. So I had to do something to make sure that I could get to my jack if something happened, because this is all resting on here. I didn't want to tear all this out and actually have to be able to get to the jack. So in this photo, you can kind of see the well where the jack comes out of. And what I did was I actually put it down in this kind of open area underneath, shoved underneath the actual kitchen. I took an old Jeep floor mat and lined all that too, so it doesn't bounce around and it really sits in there nicely, and that has worked out nice. So the jack is actually shoved down below, back in there, and then in here, and the rest of this cutout with the jack being there, I still have this kind of hollowed out spot, and I have my Coleman fuel there for the stove, which I can just grab and pull out with my chairs. So this is the way that we would always have it set up. These chairs are little Coleman chairs. They're really affordable. I'll put them down below, and I'll talk about all this more later when I do the loadout. But this was basically what we did. My kids quickly set up the table and chairs while I set up the stove and started getting food cooking. And it worked out really nicely because I could be on this side completely and cooking and be out of everybody's way, whereas they could get access to things that they want out of their own bags right through this area, which my wife did a lot to actually get to dry goods, chips, whatever it might be if she's setting the food out as well. Now, as I said, this piece does come out. You have to move the front seat up a little bit so that it gets untrapped, but this is basically comes right out. Now my thought is I can put down the seat and I could actually sleep in here on an overlanding by myself. So that's pretty nice. And it goes right back in place. I built it right around, forming around this speaker here, so you just pull it forward and you know that it's rock solid in place. I thought about doing a latch or something to connect it so that it wasn't free flowing, like this is actually connected down in front to the seats, but I still haven't figured that part out yet. Maybe you have a suggestion for anchoring this down. When I put the seat back, it really can't come out, so that holds it there, but I feel like something needs to pin it up front, and if you have a suggestion on that, that'd be awesome. So ultimately I was really happy that I built this on this side, self-contained to itself, and then I have the compartment that can come out. The other thing that I did too is I built this little shelf, and I really was worried that I was making it too narrow. You can check this build video out up here on the right, but it was perfect because as you can see, I can still sit on the bumper and eat or do whatever, and this one ended up being just a lot of glasses, paper plates, different things that weren't super heavy, but you just needed to put down somewhere near the vehicle, or if you're pulling something out of the vehicle and you wanted to set it down. So this worked really well. I'm very, very happy with how simple this shelf is for the tailgate, and it has just been, I don't know how you get along without it overlanding. A build like this was a little bit intimidating, but I really knew that it was the next step to overlanding for me, to making comfort for when my family and I travel and we're able to stop and make our own food. So many times you stop and get fast food, and after a while you just get rock gut. And I just love being able to make my own food, quesadillas, whatever it might be, eggs, pancakes. This makes it so easy because you really do have a portable kitchen with you. It has turned out so much better than I absolutely thought. I mean, just having this and traveling for 10 days and using it was absolutely fabulous. Like I said, the only thing I would add would be a canopy for those rainy times, because that is a little bit rough. But let me know what you think in the comments. Would love to hear your thoughts and your feedback. Till next time, just remember, life's a hike, so hike happy. With a cool kitchen kit for your Overland Jeep.